Hey, this is Aaron Price, CEO of TechUnited. Very excited to have joining us today Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill, the Democratic nominee for Governor of New Jersey. Congresswoman, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So we're here to talk about all things business, tech, AI. Our community is very interested in this topic. I want to start with some of your own experience with the technology world. First, can you just tell me, what's your lock screen image? Tell us about, what does Mikie do personally with technology?
Well, I laugh because my lock screen image is generally curated by my 13-year-old daughter. And it's sometimes just all her. And I, by the way, have 4 kids, but you would think I only have one because it's all pictures of her. And then sometimes she just is, messing around, and it's like really weird pictures. So, it'll be me going like, and I'm not realizing it. So I'll set my phone down and it'll go with the lock screen and somebody will be looking at it. I'm like, oh crap.
I have 2 daughters similar age, 12 and 15, and they are constantly battling for the name of the contact. Aaron's favorite daughter is a common change in the phone.
Yeah.
Does that happen to you?
Yep. We've had that. And then the stuff for the different TV accounts and who gets to put up the little picture.
Oh, the profile picture.
My profile picture. Yeah. I've been that mean lady from Ariel, the Mean Mermaid, for a while. I don't know what I did.
Yeah, I get it. Well, let's start there then. So, I think quite a bit about the use of social media, and I know you've taken some positions on this, especially for teenagers, and I think about this for young women. What do you think is the appropriate role of state government, should you be elected governor, on regulating things like, we're going to get to AI more deliberately, but let's start, since we're here with the young kids, on the role of policy and social media.
Yeah. So I think the government has a far bigger role to play than we've done. And I say that because I have 4 kids. And I can tell you as a parent, to put the burden on parents is just, it just isn't working for kids right now. And I think maybe we were slowly getting into a decent place before COVID, but like so many families during COVID, my kids' whole world was online. Our schools were out. They were doing schooling on the computer. And they all sort of developed this. My in-laws were living with me too. Everybody sort of developed this thing where there were different places you'd hide out to. So you can just see, and I could just see in my own family how social and community broke down, how people became very isolated, how the attachment to social media developed, and kind of just as parents, my husband and I just lost all control during COVID. And now, I come down in the mornings, and my teenage son, who I thought he grew up with me, but sometimes I'm like, maybe somebody took him to a cave with wolves or something, because he holds his spoon, right? And he's eating cereal, and he's got his phone, and he's like this. And I'm just like, oh God. So I think we really need to give parents more support in dealing with tech. And I'll tell you the difference. So, I'm probably giving way too much information on my battles with social media, but my daughter cracks like everything. We put in all this stuff, and then she cracks it. And I can always tell when she hasn't cracked it yet, because she's riding her bike, she's going to see friends in the neighborhood. And I can always tell when she's either found where I hid my iPad or cracked her phone code or what have you, because suddenly she's not leaving the house. I can't find her. She's not hanging out in the kitchen. She's in some bedroom or something where she's just watching 1,000 hours of TikTok or some other TV show or YouTube or what have you. And I can tell by her mood. I can tell she's really unpleasant to deal with. And you look at the studies and you can see that after 3 hours, it does this much to kids. If you spend 5 hours a day, it does this much to kids. And we just don't have the data. And I'll just kind of wrap this part up because I know we have a lot to get to. But the canary in the coal mine for me was being out in Silicon Valley about probably now it's been about 6 years ago. And I was out there. And this was, if you can take your mind back, this was the time when we were all trying to get smart boards in the classroom and iPads in the classroom and get our kids technology savvy. And in Silicon Valley, their kids were going to schools that had no screens. And here's where they were developing the algorithms. And here's where they knew exactly how dangerous those algorithms were going to be to kids' brains. And they knew the science behind it. So, what we need as parents is an equal amount of knowledge. So, what we need as parents is to understand the algorithms. We need more transparency in the algorithms. And that's one of the reasons I want to have a center of excellence here in New Jersey, like we've done for gun safety, to really at least give us the data. Maybe it doesn't give us exactly how to, but we at least can know this is what it's doing to kids' brains. This is what will make it better. Because right now, I can argue this. I hear it from parents across the state. I see it in my own home. We need more data to really respond to this appropriately.
I want to make sure, I could imagine how some people may have heard that. So I want to make sure you have a chance to be very clear on this point. Do you believe the issue is primarily about informing parents? Or are you suggesting that there are some restrictions that we should implement on some of the tools and the social media companies, et cetera, or both of these things, by the way?
I get informed as a parent all the time. I get informed that if I want to go on some website, I can set up safety programs, or I get informed that there are some tools I can use. But I have to tell you, it is not enough. It's not enough to know that on every single app that might come across my kid's phone, that I could go in there and fix it. I mean, honestly, I get informed. I could take a full-time job of monitoring my children's screen use, or I can get a little help where we're saying, like, no cell phones in the classroom. In there for just at least in the time they're in the classroom. We want kids to at least have the ability to focus, to listen to teachers, and ask educators. I mean, ask anybody who's taught in a classroom the difference between having every kid have a cell phone and every kid not having a cell phone, and what a difference that makes. I think some of it is suggestions. So, parents are going to have different things that they need their children to have access to. But I think having, more ideas about how you can come together as a neighborhood, or how the PTAs can come together, so parents can come together and say, look, we all let's talk about when we all think our kids should have access to a smartphone. And we all do flip phones together, because we know that if a couple of kids have a smartphone and your kid's the one with the flip phone, like, that's not going to work either. So there's a lot of work we can do, but I think we start with this center of excellence to really study the magnitude of the problem and then push out good ideas. Hey, here's where we mandate no cell phones in the classroom. Yeah. I mean, that's just pure education. And come on.
We have seen,
here's where we give communities suggestions for how they can determine how they want to move forward in the community with all of the data.
Yeah. And the results from schools that have implemented no schools in the classroom have shown extraordinary results, especially when it comes to other social connections. I do find it's interesting in the tech world generally, more parents seem to be anti-cell phone for kids. I am one of those people. Yeah. I was actually taking as a badge of honor trying to have my daughter be the last one in the class with a phone. That it did not make me a very popular parent, and it lost. I almost made it, but last three standing. COVID was a challenge for us.
Well, good for you. The studies on brain health, and I'll tell you, we have an epidemic of loneliness in this country, and we are seeing that 17-year-olds have the same number of interactions as 70-year-olds. And just think to yourself of what you were doing at 17 and all of the things you were doing in high school and after school activities and social activities and summer jobs and all the social connections you had. I mean, 17 should be a time when you have a lot of social connections. And by 70, you sort of refine, like, these are my people. But 17, you should be finding your people, and that's not the case right now.
Agreed. So it does lead to, let's evolve this to what happens in the business community, right? Your children, my children, as they get older, one of our biggest state exports, unfortunately, is our talent. We're seeing young people leave the state. I'm sure we would both like to see our children stay close, and I think would also like to see the general workforce in New Jersey that we grow here stay in the state. How do we make sure we train that workforce? We can talk about high school and later, but in general, to also understand how to embrace these tools, what's the right role for these tools, and how do we educate folks so that we have the talent here? Our very strong view is that AI is changing things very, very rapidly. The industry is being disrupted much quicker than any previous major industrial shift or economic shift. Mm-hmm. So how do we make sure that the talent that is educated here and that we hope to attract here has the skills that we need for the economy of the future.
Great. So I sit on the special committee for strategic competition with the Chinese Communist Party, and that's very tech heavy in our competition and how we see things. It's why I can tell you, not to harp on our last conversation, but why I can tell you that in China, the parent company of TikTok, ByteDance, only allows very curated stuff to children in China, very positive messaging, limited time online, etc. But that said, what I will tell you too, as we're looking at how rapidly technology is moving, I was speaking, I speak to different tech executives in line with that committee's work. And I remember one person saying, we were studying AI and we were studying different models, and we thought, in about 2 or 3 years, we'll probably be at this point. And they said we were there 6 months later. I mean, even if you are somebody in the tech industry, things are moving more quickly than you anticipate. They are just going so rapidly, and it's one of those areas where I think you've sort of brought up in education and jobs. You've brought up two things that kind of speak to two different things I'm really working on. One is New Jersey largely has the best education system in the nation. It's still by zip code. There's a lot more we have to do, and we should still be, I still feel we should be doing better. That said, we have more scientists and engineers per square mile than anywhere else in the country. It's this talented workforce that, despite how hard it can be to do business here, that people still locate here. And sometimes we've had companies move out and then move right back because they say they can't find this talented workforce. A lot of that talented workforce is in life sciences. And I'm telling you that because when you build something here, you start to get the whole ecosystem. And that's why tech is so important, because as you and I were talking a little bit before this about how important it is as these things are growing so very quickly that we're in on the ground floor, that we're not missing opportunities here in technology. And you can see that in things like, say, our pharmaceutical companies. So we have a lot of pharmaceutical companies. They develop these drugs, and then you have all these follow-on businesses. I've been to businesses where they have paint that goes on medicine so that if it gets too hot and is no good anymore, the paint turns a different color. Or zebra striping, a couple of years ago, so that they could track where all of the drugs were going. Or sanitizing areas that in many places in the country you have to mail things to it, but here we have it right here in New Jersey. So you develop all these other jobs. That's why these kind of core industries are so important to states, and I'd love to see New Jersey do better by technology. We see that New York really has such a huge amount of investment in technology, and New Jersey, even though I think you were telling our team that about 20% of the people that work in technology in New York come from New Jersey, we're still seeing that overinvestment in New York. And so growing tech hubs here in New Jersey has been very important to me. And I think something that we could do a lot better is making sure that we're all working together. So we really advocated here in New Jersey for a tech hub, but it was largely through our universities, Rutgers and Princeton. The governor should be involved more in that process, advocating more, utilizing the delegation. Maybe this is because I come from the House of Representatives. I see the underutilization of our delegation in Washington, because we should be getting more money back. We should be getting more precedence on some of these tech hubs. I tell people all the time, if you walk by the Supreme Court building, there's this house called Florida House. And it's this kind of huge Southern mansion looking thing. And I said to somebody, what the hell is Florida House? And that's like the lobbying house. They lobby people there. They bring them right off the Senate or the House and get them into Florida House. And I'm sure feed them great, key lime pie and, what do you drink down in Florida, and pina coladas or something. And then, say like, hey, wouldn't you like to invest in X, Y, or Z? This is what we're offering. This is what we can. And we've got to have, some breakfast with, Taylor ham, egg, and cheese, and get people in there to invest in Jersey and really lay out all of the things we have to offer. So that's important, finding those pathways for federal investment, making sure that all of our great talent and our great education system feeds into technology. I laid out what we have, but the reason it's so important that we keep we can't rest on our laurels here. as you pointed out, this is moving really, really quickly, and the education we're offering students today is not going to be the education they're going to need for the jobs of tomorrow. So we're going to need to continue to be really nimble and pushing into how we get kids ready for AI and tech. And, it's something that, like I said, being nimble is the key here. And I think that feedback loop between industry and education is going to be more and more important. And we see some schools doing that very well in certain areas, not in tech, but say in nursing, or in culinary arts or something, where students are being fed right into the jobs in the local area. We need to do that for tech.
Yeah. So I'll try to make this a compact response, but a few things that you reminded me of. One, absolutely agree with you on the life sciences industry. I would say it's yes, and there's quite a bit happening on the digital landscape purely, especially as it comes to AI and the ability to stand up services very, very rapidly for people to test. If my daughter wants to test an early stage idea, she can have a website up in a few hours to see if the market even cares, to start to validate these things. And that's often what's happening around the country in people's natural geographies. And so we want to make sure we're incentivizing investment in New Jersey. We were behind a strong advocate for the QSBS treatment that recently passed through Murphy's budget, which we're very pleased with. The question broadly is, how would you encourage more early stage investment in New Jersey when 90% of it originally goes into New York? And kind of a follow-on piece of that, QSBS is a very, very big deal and a big win for the business community. However, the bill in its current form doesn't reward, in fact, penalizes those who've been building here for the last many years. The stock treatment doesn't allow for the benefit unless it's stock issued after January 1st, 2026. So the average, was termed an exit, a sale of a business, takes 8 to 10 years. The people who've been investing in New Jersey for the last 8 to 10 years, who might be upon that final process of selling the business, actually are disincentivized to do so in New Jersey. So first question, how do we drive more early stage investment in New Jersey? Second question, would you support an amendment to allow some of the founders who've been investing in this community for so long to also qualify for that QSBS treatment?
Yeah. So I'll do the easy part first. I'd love to talk more to industry about exactly how that's going to work and what we can do to make sure that people who've been investing in New Jersey for a long time aren't penalized. But as far as the first part of the question, I think, again, a lot of that is working with industry to come up with the pathways that they stay here. But one thing that we really are going to need to do, and I think any state who can crack the code on this is going to be the state that sees a lot of this technology investment, is drive down utility costs. That's probably not what you hear all the time, but I'll tell you, as we talk to tech companies, and we just saw CoreWeave go public, for example, so we have these massive, huge tech companies from my district, but these massive tech companies that are really going to, changing the technology world and really competing not just at a New Jersey or country level, but at a worldwide level, really important. But they need energy, and they need cheap energy, and they're going to go where cheap energy is, and that's where
there are states that are being very aggressive on this issue, and New Jersey's introduced some policies that I believe are very well intended, but if our community is concerned, may push them out. Cost of doing business.
Like so many things, we do good policies many times, or policies that are well intentioned, but we don't keep following them and say, okay, this is what I want this to do. And you have to keep following legislation, because you have to keep following statutes, because often there's unintended consequences. I'd say almost always. Right. So then you have to go back and tweak it, so it's actually having the effect you want. And then the other part of that is, we just don't go back and cut through red tape and permitting and regulatory problems. I always say there's the right way, the wrong way, and the New Jersey way. And the New Jersey way has grinding too many businesses to a halt. And we're coming to the breaking point on it. And I love how just next door, Josh Shapiro cut down small business permitting times by 90%. That really speaks to my the efficiency in my heart, just driving down those times, because the last thing we want is red tape to get in the way of innovating, to get in the way of innovation, to get in the way of growth. There are a lot of good reasons. I can tell you, we have Superfund sites. We have a lot of environmental disasters. We have a lot of things we have to be very careful with as we're moving forward in development or building, et cetera. And that's important. But there are areas where we just do self-harm, where we just take too long and cost people millions of dollars. again, not necessarily in your industry, but I was talking to a developer who was telling me he just wanted to put a Starbucks where an old bank was, and it took him like 12 years. And he's like, the drive-through the same, like what? I said, how much did that cost you? He said, millions of dollars. So we've got to get better at permitting and regulatory reform to get people here, but then driving down utility costs. And I get so frustrated because New Jersey just has for too long been a very, let's put out the near-term fire and deal with everything else down the road. And down the road is now, and we're seeing a disaster in many ways in the financing of our state. And we see that with some of our power and our utilities and our utility costs. And now we're buying power from other states. So when I say to people, I think, short term, we got to push in a lot of communities. Solar, that's the cheapest form of energy. It's everywhere in Texas. We got to really drive down costs. But long term, we need to open up another nuclear plant. And, we have a pre-approval. People say, oh, Mikey, that's like a 10-year proposition. And I'm like, so we just in 10 years sit here and complain that we have no power and we have brownouts now. We've got to come up with a strategy to deliver clean, cheap power to everywhere in our state. And that, I think that'll be a big game changer for innovation.
We strongly agree with that point of view. I know we're actually a little past time, so I'm going to wrap up very shortly. First, the point about the developer, and it may or may not be relevant to our community, we see technology as the enabling tool for all business, whether you're the local dry cleaner that needs to be empowered by a POS system that uses technology because its convenience is often the differentiator there. So our community touches all of these industries and would absolutely agree that oftentimes the intention of the policy is right on target, but the administration, the permitting process, the example you use, it can be frustrating and turn people away. So I think you'll find a welcome audience who wants to hear more about that, how that may happen. Broadly, this is the last question. You will be quick. It's an unusual time in government right now. It's an unusual time in this country. You obviously have a strong federal point of view and now a very engaged regional state point of view. Can you end on something that is hopeful, regardless of how this race goes, maybe even regardless of what's happening like day to day in the White House? But what do you hang your hat on to believe that there is hope generally for, of course, New Jersey, but more broadly the state when we're at such an unusual time in the political environment right now?
Mm-hmm. So, I've just done a tour up and down the state, and I'm really worried about the new piece of legislation, how devastating it will be. I really think that charting a different path forward in New Jersey is so critically important. And it's scary times, and it's worrisome because some of the things, that we're just trying to keep certain communities stable, just trying to get to like a stable place where we could move forward. So it's really devastating to see some of this going on, and you kind of laid out some of the other fears people have. But the good news, I think, is that we should be further along in certain areas. We should be able to deliver healthcare better. We should already be further along in utilities and clean power and driving down cost and figuring out that pathway forward. We in New Jersey, we shouldn't come to this housing crisis. We shouldn't be in a transportation crisis. We have more scientists and engineers per square mile than anywhere else. Like, let's figure this out. So I would say the good news is, after a period of what I would say of inertia in this country, not just in New Jersey, but just in the country in some ways, and waiting till a bridge was, collapsing until you actually fixed it, not being strategic and thinking about the future and sort of cutting some of these programs down to the bone so that they just didn't function anymore. I feel like we're coming up to a time of a great deal of innovation. I mean, certainly we have to because of what technology is doing, but even beyond that, I think there is a desire to take on new ideas and innovation that I did not feel even 5-6 years ago. So that's something I'm very excited about, that maybe, even though it's a scary time, even though I'm fighting tooth and nail to stop the defunding of NIH and NST and some of the areas that are so important to innovation, and even though I'm really concerned about the attacks on the opportunity that we've always tried to create for so many families here, I'm hoping that here in New Jersey, we can chart a path forward that is actually going to create all those things, but do better. and actually solve some of the problems that we've been riddled with for far too long. So that's my hope.
All right. Well, I think you'd find a community here that is eager to support that mission. I think I would hope to say, regardless of the political party, should you win, I think you'll find a strong partner in the TechUnited New Jersey community, people building efficient tools in healthcare, and we're eager to see more, more affordable energy prices for the advancement of AI and general consumer prices broadly.
Fantastic.
So we appreciate your time today. Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill, best of luck with the campaign. I hope that we'll welcome you soon at some of our in-person events so we can have a deeper dialogue with our community on this. We do a lot of high-fiving in this community, so we're going to end on a high five. On the count of three, you can high-five the camera. 1, 2, 3. Boom.